the cusp of a complete transformation, a great reset in which AI dictates everything. Then the question comes, who's going to be controlling the AI? Prime Minister after Prime Minister has been a Sabbatean. Well, how the Sabbateans work, they present themselves as one of you. They manipulate themselves to positions of power and they run the show, but the population look at them and think that they're being run by their own people. What I call this global cult, global network of secret societies with its interlocking leadership. It don't care what you believe, so long as you believe it rigidly and without question. Whether it's religious or political, or once you're in that mode, they gotcha. Mayer Amstel Rothschild and another guy called Adam Weishaupt together created the Bavarian Illuminati. My philosophy all these years has been very simple. Whatever I know there's always more to know. So therefore, you're constantly asking the question, okay, I think I got this, but what don't I know? And what don't I know takes you deeper in the rabbit hole. And eventually, talking about crazy, when you go on that road, when you don't have these walls of belief holding you into limited perception, when you're prepared to go beyond them and explore beyond them, not necessarily to believe everything you come up with or see, but to give it an opportunity to make its case. Freedom, real freedom in a human body, is not listening to what others say if what they say is valid. That's how you expand your awareness of how things are. The foundation of the conspiracy for human enslavement is control of human perception. That's the foundation of it. Everything is basically aimed at that. If the way we perceive is the way we behave as we do because we perceive as we do.
Yeah.
And so how do you get people to perceive what you want? Well, if you want to break them up into belief systems that you can play off against each other, then you need to have multiple belief systems that allow you to do that. What they've had to do up to this point to achieve that is to control information. You've got this global cult, this network of secret societies, which is fiercely compartmentalized. Even within this cult network, vast numbers of people, the majority, I would say, are not, I definitely would say, are not aware of the big picture. I mean, you look at the Freemasons, that's broken up into degrees. Degrees of what? Degrees of knowledge. So you're looking at the inner circle of these secret societies, where the knowledge of the real agenda is held. And even beyond that, you're looking at the inner circle of the cult itself. But there are certain factions of this cult, shall we say, that are particularly important in advancing this global agenda of human AI digital dystopia. And one of them is the Sabbatean cult. You go back to the 1600s and a bloke called Sabbatai Zevi. Sabbatai relates to the planet Saturn, which is a big time part of all this in terms of the religious symbolism and occult symbolism that you see over and over. He claimed to be the Jewish Messiah, and he lived in the former Ottoman Empire, which was an Islamic empire. And he attracted a tremendous following for his time when the population of the world was much smaller. Then the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire said to him, you either prove you are the Messiah or you convert to Islam, or there'll be bloody trouble. So he decided to convert to Islam, which, shall we say, disappointed a lot of his followers, but a lot of them converted with him. And they converted to Islam, except they didn't. They openly were apparently Islamic, and they became known as the Donma, which means to turn. but they didn't turn. They just appeared to turn. And they created this cult, which was actually not a Judaistic cult. It was an inversion of Judaism. For instance, if there was a fasting day in Judaism, it would be a feasting day in Sabbateanism. This started a trend with Sabbateanism where you appear to be something while you're something very different. So a Sabbatean would, for instance, enter the Roman Catholic Church and appear to everyone looking on to be a Catholic, except they're not. They're a Sabbatean infiltrating Catholicism. And the following century, the 1700s, along came a guy called Jacob Frank. He claimed to be a reincarnation of Sabbatai Zevi, and also a reincarnation of the Old Testament prophet Jacob, or oligarch as we call him today. He was the one that took Sabbateanism into a whole new level of manipulation and infiltration. Part of it was to infiltrate the Roman Catholic Church, which didn't need a lot of infiltration if you look at the inner circle and where the Roman Catholic Church actually came from. He connected with a guy called Mayer Amstel Rothschild and another guy called Adam Weishaupt, who together created what was called the Bavarian Illuminati in 1776, another expression of this cult. So the Rothschilds are not actually Jewish, they're Sabbatean. And if you look at the history of the creation of modern Israel and the first Zionist conference in Basel, Switzerland in the latter years of the 1800s, you see that the Rothschilds were the orchestrators of it. And by the way, that first Zionist Congress, I think it was 1897, was in Basel, Switzerland, yes, but it was supposed to be in Munich, Germany. The reason it wasn't is that the Zionists had so much pushback from Jewish people in Germany who had no interest whatsoever in upping sticks. They were fine, thank you very much, and heading for Palestine. And then you had the First World War, the Second World War, and after the Second World War, understandably, Jewish people in Germany were out of the place in vast numbers to America and to Palestine, all orchestrated in terms of the Palestinian occupation by the Rothschilds, who were Sabbateans. And then in 1948, you had the establishment of the State of Israel based on the Old Testament, which is a load of old nonsense in terms of the justification of it. Prime minister after prime minister after prime minister has been a Sabbatean. And how the Sabbateans work, as I said a few minutes ago, is they present themselves as one of you, and they manipulate themselves to positions of power, either over power or advisor power, just one step back. And they run the show, but the population look at them and think that they're being run by their own people. They're not. It's a completely different network of Sabbateanism connected to the global cult. And I first came across this Sabbateanism when it was exposed by a Jewish rabbi in two books. The books were written a long time apart. It was a guy called Antelman who wrote the books. And he eventually realized, this rabbi, that this Sabbateanism network was real and it was running Israel. And it was basically had taken over the whole perception of the Jewish people. And so once you are in a position of power, you then can dominate the circulation of information. What has happened in Gaza to the Palestinians, what has happened since 1948 and before to the Palestinians, is utterly grotesque, utterly appalling, and beyond bloody belief. But that's what religious belief does, and the chosen people belief does. But once you are in a position of power and you can control the education of kids, and you can control the circulation of information to a very large extent, then you can start indoctrinating your target population, who are Jewish, not Sabbatean, into believing what you want them to believe. Because the more you centralize, the more the fewer have power over the many. The more you centralize, the many are controlled by fewer and fewer people. That's why in the end they want a world government, which would be not elected, but selected, called a technocracy, which Elon Musk's grandfather was all for, and a lot of things happening now can be explained by that whole technocracy agenda. They created, the Rockefellers, with the Rothschild input, of course, the World Health Organization, because what they wanted to do was put control of global health policy under one roof, and the extent to which they have done that, COVID, I rest my case. And the guy who's running the World Health Organization and oversaw the appointment of this crook called Tedros, the Director General, was it Secretary General, whatever, and is Bill Gates. And Bill Gates is a Rockefeller gopher. So it makes sense that a Rockefeller gopher, Gates, would be running the World Health Organization on behalf of the Rockefellers who actually created it. So this Rothschild-Rockefeller axis combination have yes been involved in so much of what this cult has done. And you look at David Rockefeller, who best part of 100 by the time he died. He was a manipulator across decade after decade after decade, pushing the world to this centralization of power, which is now being taken over by AI. Henry Kissinger, a manipulator out of Germany, a Jewish manipulator out of Germany, Sabbatean manipulator, truth, was a gopher for the Rockefellers. Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, who's just stepped down, he was a protege and put into that position by Henry Kissinger, who was a gopher for the Rockefellers, who are gophers for the Rothschilds, etc. You see how the hierarchy works.
Wow.
And you keep going deeper and deeper, and you go into levels of this cult which do not put themselves on public display, and in the end it goes into another dimension. In the early 90s, when I was putting together this cult and how it worked, seems a long time ago now, but I was doing it in the early 90s. I started to see, as the 90s unfolded, that so many of these inner circle cultists that I could acknowledge and see, like I say, the real power is in the unseen. They were taking part in satanic ritual, like human sacrifice ritual, and they were very much involved in the pedophilia and pedophile networks. So you say, hold on, what's going on here? Why? What's all this about? I've talked over the decades to a lot of Satanists, former Satanists, and people who took part in satanic ritual against their will, various ways and for various reasons. And they told me the stories about how they are interacting in these rituals with other dimensional, quote, gods. They're not gods, they're a bunch of prats, but they're perceived as gods. The next thing you see is actually, hold on a minute, but the ancients were sacrificing people to the gods. What's all this about? And what the ancients said, and this happened all over the world, is that they were sacrificing people as a gift to the gods. And the next question, well, what do the gods get out of that? Well, that is explained by something else I've come across over the years, which more and more people, funnily enough, are talking about now. These gods, these other dimensional gods, are feeding off human energy. That's why they've created this simulated reality, and that's why they've created this wheel of samsara trap. So you don't get out. You can get out. I explain in the book how you can get out, but if you're not aware, you don't get out. You just go on this wheel of samsara in this constant cycle of reincarnation and producing this energy. Now, it's a particular type of human energy they want, which explains so much about the world. They want low vibrational human emotion and mental energy, but particularly emotion, very powerful. And that is fear, anxiety, depression, hatred, regret, resentment, war, conflict. All these things create and generate from humans a low vibrational frequency. Every time we think and feel emotion, we're generating a frequency.
Sure.
Now, this frequency relates to the nature of the emotion. So the ones that I've talked about, they are low vibrational emotions: joy, love, happiness, peace, contentment, and appreciation. These are all much higher frequency states that we give off.
You'd think that they'd want to feed off of that. But, people do this too. We talk about, energy siphoning off of us from these negative frequencies, but people do that too. Narcissists and evil people, they put you in these states and make you angry and trigger you just to feed off of you and drain you. Humans do that.
And then you ask, well, who's controlling them as well? So when I was researching all this, I came across the work of a guy called Robert Monroe of the Monroe Institute, who was an astral traveler. He had this ability to project his consciousness into the astral dimension, not through a near-death experience. The body doesn't have to die to astral project. This is after I concluded this loosh thing, which he called it loosh. I called it low vibrational energy before. What he learned in his astral travels was that these entities were feeding off low vibrational human energy, and he gave the name to it, loosh. The US military became so interested in what he was doing that they set up a project called Gateway, in which they brought him and other people who had this astral traveling gift together to do this study, this gateway study into the astral. First of all, they concluded, because eventually the report was declassified by the CIA some years ago, they concluded that reincarnation was real, but they also mentioned that so many of the subjects, the astral travelers, came across in the astral reptilian entities that they gave them the name in the Gateway Project of the alligators. Oh, he's seen some more alligators. And as I've become infamous for since the 1990s, that reptilian form is massively part of these astral gods. The other thing that you notice is that, we have these pantheons of gods, like this series of gods in the different cultures, like the Greek pantheon, the Egyptian pantheon, the Roman pantheon, etc. They're everywhere. all over the world, there were these pantheons of gods. I mean, in the Hindu religion, they still have these pantheon of gods. They gave them different names because they had different languages and different cultures. But what you realize is they're talking about the same gods. You have this scene in the Matrix movie, the first one, where the Morpheus character holds up the battery. It says the Matrix is a computer-generated dream world designed to turn humans into one of these, a battery, a source of energy. Exactly. That was a tremendously profound line in what was supposed to be a fictional movie. And so we come back to the satanic rituals. What were the gift to the gods? It's still going on. What's become clear to me in these rituals, ancient and now in secret modern, they are conducting them specifically to generate maximum terror in the victim. And if I was looking at someone and they were in an emotional state of terror, maybe, then I would see from their facial expression and their body language the state they were in. What I wouldn't be able to see, because it's outside of visible light, is the energy they're giving off as a result of that state of emotion. What's happening in these rituals, this is the gift to the gods, is that some of these gods are over gods. They're perceived as gods. This is a family podcast. I can't say what I think of them, really.
You can.
And so they're overseeing it in the astral. And the reason we can't see the emotions that people are giving off is it's an astral frequency. It's going into the astral, and they are feeding off it. The terror in the victim has the effect of releasing an adrenaline into the blood. And this is what the Satanists conducting the ritual in our reality drink. And that's what we call adrenochrome. That's of course.
But they're doing that for real. Are we talking about this from an energetic standpoint and a reality standpoint?
Yeah.
Because obviously there are many stories and speculation on adrenochrome and harvesting the blood of people in this fear state or children. Exactly. So it's really happening in this world.
Exactly. The Satanists in this reality drink the blood, and the entities in the astral reality absorb the energy. That's the gift to the gods. And what I also realized as we went along and constantly asked the question, why, what don't I know, is the connection between Satanism and pedophilia. It's the same thing.
Really?
Why is pedophilia...
Is it like stealing their innocence and damaging in them to keep them in this state?
For some reason, they want a child's energy before puberty. We see puberty as like a hormonal change in a child. But the hormonal change comes from an energetic vibrational change as the energetic field changes as you move into adulthood. What they want is that energy before that change. This is the whole basis of pedophilia. They don't want a child's energy who is happy, content, joyous. They don't want that energy. You can stick that. That's why the world is as it is. That's why the world is as it is. They want to manipulate people through the manipulation of events, through the global cult, into a low vibrational state in their reaction to events. Think 9/11, think First World War, Second World War, etc., etc. Think Gaza, think the Ukraine conflict, all of it. They have to get that prepubescent energy in a low vibrational state. And that's the abuse of children. I've researched this to the nth degree through the 1990s and across into the new millennium. And what this cult in secret puts children through in their captive state is almost unimaginable. And I've talked to so many women in America and in Europe and Australia and other places who tell the same story of what happened to them as children. So the more the child can be abused violently, the more they can be sexually abused as a little kid, the more the energy of the child understandably takes on a very low vibrational state. And that's the state they want the child's energy in to absorb it. And you know,
the rest of their lives.
Yeah. But this is the point. They can change their energy as they awaken to another level of consciousness, and they can break that cycle. But if it's crossed your line in terms of evidence because of all the people you've met and all the things you've heard from so many different people in so many different parts of the world, because it's a global agenda, if you think it's true, then frickin' say it. What's the point of not saying it? You know, tell the kids being abused now that, oh no, I'm a bit frightened of what people might think. I don't give a damn what people think. I give a damn about whether it's true or not. When you say these things, it's like when I first started talking about them, it was kind of obviously completely far out. And to a lot of people, it still is, but nothing like what used to be. Because people are starting to grasp in very greater numbers that the world is not just a little bit not like they thought it was. It's absolutely nothing like they thought it was. And what I would say to the alternative media, and there are some great people in the alternative media, and there's some really, really unpleasant, manipulative people in the alternative media. They tend to get the algorithmic support and the massive funding. But I would say to them, you know, don't stop with Trump or Harris, Democrats or Republicans. Focus your mind on the fact that whatever you think you know, there's always more to know, and expand your mind into other possibilities. But you see, here again, going on from what we said before, the alternative media, not least in America, elsewhere too, to a large extent, but massively in America, is dominated by the Christian belief system. And so there's this these walls of here and no further, otherwise I'm not a Christian anymore. And in fact, you know, what I've watched, particularly since COVID, I'm kicking me bloody table here, particularly since COVID, is how the central core, which gets all the algorithmic support and the funding, has come in from the mainstream overwhelmingly and taken over that central part of the alternative media, and it's dominated by the Christian belief system. And others have in recent times converted to Christianity or converted to Catholicism, I would say the most extreme form of Christianity. But it's if you're a journalist, never mind an alternative journalist, if you're a journalist, first of all, you've got to clear your mind of belief systems and let the evidence be your guide. Because otherwise, there's areas you will not go into and you will not talk about if your belief system is under threat if you go there. And you must not ever take a side in terms of politics and in terms of religion. You can have your religious belief if you like. You don't take a side, because once you take a side, the right or the left, you are filtering evidence, information through that belief system, right. Which it explains why I've seen the so-called alternative media castigating the left when it had power under Biden and Obama, what passes for the left anyway, for doing certain things. And then I see Trump doing exactly the same things, and his regime doing exactly the same things. And the same people who castigated the left are okay with it, with Trump doing it, because he's the right. He's one of them. He ain't, but he claims to be. And you can't have these filters. The only filter that you need to have if you're an alternative journalist, or a journalist in general, in my view, I used to be one of them. I still am, but without an editor telling me what I can and cannot say. If you have a filter, the only filter should be, is it true or not? Can I justify it or not on the basis of the evidence I have? It's not, is the right doing it or is the left doing it? That should be irrelevant to you. What I'm saying is this bigger picture that we're talking about here, so much that happens in the human world can only be understood if you see that level of it. If you're only seeing this level of it, it's kind of bewildering. Why did they do that? Why did they do this?
I feel like you kind of were answering it, but I was gonna wrap up by asking you something that I have contemplated many, many times, and that's whether or not you fight the system or you essentially remove yourself from the system. And I feel like you were kind of answering that, but really it sounds like it boils down to not having sort of like a religious-like stance on anything, and it's about staying open-minded. Do we fight the system, or do we remove ourselves and try and adjust or change our perception and open it up?
Well, I've had a phrase I've used for decades, what you fight, you become. And I think there's endless evidence of that when you fight something,
right,
you often become what you're fighting in the act of
You're playing
fighting.
into it, ultimately. You're playing into it. You're participating in that narrative.
Do we fight the system? No. You know, people, they ask for solutions. I'm not interested in solutions. I'm not looking for solutions. Because solutions invariably lead to more problems in need of more solutions. What I'm looking for when I'm looking at something that we'd rather not have is, what's the cause of it? If you remove the cause of a problem, the problem must disappear because its whole basis is gone. The cause is very simple. It's simple mathematics. We're supposed to have that 8 billion people in the world. The number of people in full knowledge who are manipulating that 8 billion is a smear by comparison. Tiny. And they have to control our perceptions, and they have to manipulate us into unquestioning belief systems that can be played off against each other. Then we fight each other, and they have a free run to do what they like. Having the respect for someone else to have a different belief system to you, so long as they do not seek to impose their belief system on you. The big problem is that people they have a belief system and they want to impose it on others. That's the problem. I mean, you know, let's have a chat about your belief system and my belief system. And you know, okay, well, I don't agree with you, but you know, no problem. You have a right to believe what you believe. Once you start trying to force it on someone else, that's the bloody problem. And all over the world, religious believing parents are forcing their beliefs on their kids. And that for me is a form of child abuse, just my view. The foundation of human control, apart from perceptual control, is giving your power away to authority. Because when you have these billions and the few manipulating them, somehow you've got to manipulate that collective power, which overnight could roll you away. You've got to get that population to give their power to you. And they do this through authority. So there's 3 types of people, basically. And the first 2 are responsible for every tyranny in history. Number 1 group, where they do what authority tells them without question. Authority has said it, they know better than me, so and they have my best interests at heart. Staggering, but true. and therefore I do what they tell me. Second group, they don't want to do it, but they're frightened of not doing it. They're frightened of not acquiescing to authority. And those two groups have been responsible for every tyranny in history. Fascism, communism, tyranny is never imposed by fascist communists and tyrants because there's never enough of them. They impose those tyrannies not by doing it themselves, but by the acquiescence of the people to them. They give their power away to them. Overwhelmingly, because they're, like Nazi Germany, you had people who just believe, yes, in what the Nazis said, yes, we're the great German nation and all that stuff. And you had others who thought, well, I don't agree with this, but I better do it because otherwise what's going to happen to me? They're the two. The third group has ended every tyranny in history and has the potential to end this one globally if enough people awaken to it. And that's the group that says, I can see what you're doing because I've opened my mind and I've seen how it works, and I'm not cooperating with it. I'm not doing what you tell us to do. And if you look at various revolutions, which always kind of lead to the same people being in power, but the principle is the same. It's the few people that start it. Some of this other group, particularly the group that doesn't want to do it but is frightened of not doing it, they will join them, and eventually enough people are behind the overthrow of a tyrant to overthrow them. But it's the few that start doing it, and then the others kind of pick up and go with it. And what we need to do is to get far, far more people who are willing to let go of the fear of authority, go with ceasing to acquiesce to authority. If a politician comes out and said, this is what's going to happen, and enough of the people say we're not doing it, the politician has no power whatsoever. None. They never have had. We've always had it. But what we're manipulated to do is to give it away to authority. So first of all, in across what we call history, you've had the principle of monarchy, in which the genetic inheritance becomes the monarch, and the people then obey the monarch. And then when the people started to get into a level of maturity, we still got a monarch in Britain, by the way. We reached the point of maturity to the point where we weren't having it anymore, or globally we weren't having it anymore. Still having it in Britain, staggeringly. They had to create a new system, and that system was politics. That's why they introduced political parties, because parties are hierarchies that they can control. And so you've got Obama, Bush, Biden, Trump, Clinton, different parties, same owners, and the same direction of society. Different rhetoric, sometimes a slightly different route, but the same end to global dystopia, which is why we, despite all the party changes, A to B, A to B, A to B, B to A, we've reached the point where we are now, and still today continues to be the means to replace the monarchy power, give your power away to a monarch. You now give your mind away, your power away to a political party or a party leader. And every 3 or 4 years, you have an election campaign. The parties tell you what they think you want to hear. They'll look at their natural constituency that they want to vote for them and usually votes for them, and they will tell that constituency what it wants to hear. They're then also looking for this other group that kind of jumps between the two parties. What do I tell them what they want to hear so that I'll get just enough to get in? And that's what they do. But there's no contract. What they say they will do is not what they have to do. What they say they won't do is not what they have to not do. They've just told you what you want to hear, and then you vote for them. And then when they get in, they do what they planned all along. There was no mention of invading Venezuela, no mention of Canada as the 51st state, no mention of taking over Greenland, all of which can be explained by technocracy, by the way, and a map that was produced in the 1930s by Musk's grandfather. You are stuck with it because now they're in power for the next 4 years. And it's the same in this country. We have Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Britain, and his Labour Party. They got 1/3 of the vote at the last election. And somehow in this ludicrous thing they call a democracy, which is not a democracy at all, they've got a vast majority of MPs in Parliament and can do what they bloody like on 1/3 of the vote. It's supposed to be a democracy. So it's not, ruled by the majority. That's a tyranny as well. We can do better than that. But it's ruled by the cult, and what they're doing is getting you to give their power away, your power away to them. You vote for someone, they get into power, or you don't vote for them and the other party gets into power, and then they do what they bloody like till the next election when the same farce happens again. If we put the fault lines down of divide and rule by the respect of everyone believes what they want to believe so long as they don't impose it on anyone else, and then we look up and see the common control threat to all of us, they're not seeking to enslave Christians or seeking to enslave Muslims or Hindus or the left or the right. They want to enslave all of us. So put the fault lines down and let's focus upon the threat to all of us. And that threat can be diminished overnight, finished overnight, by simply ceasing to acquiesce with our own enslavement.